Hello, I'm Emmanuel Rivera. I'm a principal engineer with Lab 49. I work with the interactive practice. And in this video, I want to take you through Headless Design Systems and why they're great at helping organizations maintain a wide catalog of applications. So like many, I have the privilege of working with large organizations, and these organizations have a wide collection of applications that they have to maintain. Inevitably, what tends to happen is that there tends to be drifting styling, look and feel, and branding across a wide collection of applications. This inconsistency makes the collection difficult to maintain. Another problem that we have is that internal applications, especially those dedicated to back office operations, don't tend to get the same love when it comes to design and branding that the forward-facing or the outward-facing applications do. Despite this, improvements in UX and styling can greatly help improve the productivity of the internal team members working on these applications. Finally, as technology and frameworks continue to evolve, we start to introduce new technology into our collection of applications, and this too introduces a wider surface of maintenance, as now we have many more applications built on different technology and different versions of technologies that we have to maintain to reduce this drift that keeps our branding, look and feel, and overall presentation different across a collection of applications. One of the best things we can do to address this problem is implement a headless design system. Headless design is simply a way for us to extract tokens, which are the most atomic elements in a design, things that define the values for elements like colors, spacing, typography, etc., and separate them out such that they can be handled by product and design teams and abstracted away from application code. This makes sure that these team members, product and design, can be responsible for maintaining them and updating them, and also ensuring that the propagation of changes can happen seamlessly across a collection of applications without the burden of maintenance. And I'll explain how this works. Like a lot of organizations, we use wireframing tools in order to express the UI and UX of applications we aspire to build. At Lab, we're big fans of Figma. However, you can use this approach with a lot of different wireframing tools. Here I'm showing you Figma. And when we embark on a project to build a new application, we tend to start with defining the most atomic elements that are going to compose the design. Things around color theming, typography, effects like shadows and borders, units of spacing, and iconography and other things like that. These help us define how we're going to put the UI together and help us do it in a uniform way. Given these atomic elements, then we can start to build components. And here I have a collection of atomic components that we build with these elements. Here you can see things like alerts, checkbox, dropdowns, etc. These are all things that are part of this application and are predefined before we get a head start. If I were to open any one of these elements, you can see, for example, here some spacing elements. These spacing elements are defined by variables, not literal values. Variables are a feature that Figma provides us, and they're just that. They're predefined variables that hold values for different contexts of uses within a design. Here, for example, I'm showing you all the different color variables I have in this design and their representation across dark and light modes. I can also express other kinds of variables like those for font sizing for different typographical styles and uniform units of spacing, so I can apply spacing evenly and uniformly across my design. So even before we get to the development stage, in the design itself, it's important to make sure that we're applying our design consistently across a collection of applications. Using variables is great because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of what values to apply to different properties. So we're going to apply border radii or spacing or the color of a button. We can do so by selecting a predefined value that has already been set for that context instead of having to remember or copy paste values across our design. Once we have these initial components, we can then start building across this to make even more complex components. and ultimately getting then to a fully realized application. Here I'm showing you the design for an auction platform application we've developed at Lab 49, and this helps us demonstrate multiple capabilities. I won't go into how the application itself works, that's for a different video. I'm simply going to be focusing on some of the elements of its UI and how we can change them without having to go into the application code. But here you can see different representations of different screens of this application and how they work. And these were all built on the building blocks of these design tokens and atomic components. Now, when we move from Figma into development, one of the first things we have to do is take these design tokens, which are expressed in Figma variables, and export them into a design token format. To do this, we rely on the design token format, which is, at the moment I recorded this video, a draft file format by the W3C. Despite the fact that it's still in draft mode, many build tools are starting to ingest this format, and it's quickly becoming an industry standard when it comes to defining design tokens. So what we want to do is take these variables that have been expressed in Figma, export them out into a design token file. And the way this looks like is like this. It's simply a JSON file, and that JSON file contains a collection of values, and those values are a one-to-one representation between what you saw in Figma before and what you're seeing here. They're the values that we stored in these variables with some metadata around them to explain what those values represent. So for example, before I showed you a collection of colors that were being used inside of Figma Design, you can see these collection of colors being shown here with keys that represent the context in which I use these colors. The great advantage of doing this is simply JSON. This is simply data. I can use this data in conjunction with a build system to be able to take these tokens and inject them dynamically into the style authoring of many different types of applications built on different tech stacks and using different frameworks. Particularly, we're big fans of Amazon's Style Dictionary open source project, which helps automate the process of this translation. So if I have my design tokens, I can translate that very easily to formats like CSS, Sass or Less. I can use it very easily to transform it into CSS frameworks such as Bootstrap or Tailwind. And I can even use it to transform it into styles that are going to be ingested into a native mobile application development for both iOS and Android, or even mobile development frameworks like React Native. Ultimately, what we want to achieve is the following dynamic. We want to be able to start in Figma, and when we define our design system, make sure that all of these atomic values are defined as variables, and these variables are referenced in the design. Once again, this also facilitates the design process itself. Once these are ready to go, we export these as design tokens, and they get ingested into our design system implementation. These design tokens are pretty important because these design tokens become the source of truth of branding, look and feel, and overall visual representation across a catalog of applications. Now, when we have different applications, each application will usually have its own instance of a build pipeline. Each one of these can have the capability of reading from our published design token library, ingesting those tokens, and letting those tokens inform its own style authoring. In each one of these cases, these applications will have references to the tokens, not literal values. And this is great because as these tokens change, there is no need to change the style authoring of each one of these individual applications. The style will update automatically as they're simply referencing variables which values can get updated outside of the context of the application itself. What we want to achieve here is the idea of moving the maintenance of the design system left. We want to move left. And the idea with moving left is that instead of having to go into each individual application and change the code to update styling, we want to maintain the styling here in a centralized collection of design tokens and let the application simply reference them. When these design tokens change, the application can change dynamically. We just simply need to rebuild. There is no need to change any application code as a result. Now, the way this looks, I will go back to my code editor for a second, and I was showing you already my design token file. When I run my build process, the result I'm going to get in this particular case is a translation into CSS variables. And these variables then can be injected into my style authoring, and I can make references to all of these variables across my style authoring. Again, I can translate this into any number of formats like Sass, Less, Tailwind, etc. It doesn't necessarily have to be this. This is simply the example that I'm using now. So with regards to the application that we're using, I showed you before the design for the auction platform. Here's the actual running application for the auction platform itself. Again, won't go into what the auction platform does right now, but we use it for a number of different scenarios and demonstrating a number of different capabilities. Right now, I just want to concentrate on the branding and visual styling. So please pay attention to things like the color, the spacing between the cards, the border radii. Those are the things. I've made a very simple contrived example, and I'll be playing with those to demonstrate some differences. You can switch here between light and dark modes, and you get a very similar experience simply just swapping out colors and a little bit of saturation and luminosity to take advantage of light and dark modes. Now, if I were to run my build process, I have the application running on the left and I have a build running on the right. I can run a build process. And what that build is going to do, it's going to execute against an alternate set of JSON tokens. What I've done is simply, as a contrived example, I've made an alternate set of JSON tokens. What these are trying to do is they're trying to represent a progression in the branding expression. So in this point now, we've gotten to a V2 of the branding, we've changed some of the aspects of our branding, and we're ready for our collection of applications to be shown differently based on some new branding guidelines that have been made available. And the biggest change you're going to see is the fact that we've changed the primary color of the design from blue to purple. So here's the progression. So here's our original colors for our branding. Here's our new colors for our branding. Once again, simple example. I'm sure with a real example, we had a much wider array of options and probably a better design. But in any case, you can see the primary color here is changed to some shades of purple. You can also see the content and fill colors change shades of purple as well. We've also made changes to the border radii and the gaps between the cards. So if I were to go back to the application without me making any changes to the application code at all, because the style authoring makes reference to variables instead of it in itself being responsible for it, you can see that the style is completely different. Again, the spacing between the cards is different, the border radii is different, and as you can clearly see, the coloring is different as well. If I can go into the dark mode, you'll also see a different expression of the dark mode as well. Now, I'll switch one more time, and this time when I switch, I'm going to switch to the application immediately because I want you to be able to appreciate the fact that the application is going to be updated immediately without any kind of intervention to the application code itself. I'll run my build one more time to generate my tokens, going back to the original set of tokens. Now, I'll immediately switch back to the application. Look, ma, no hands. And as you can see, the application, as soon as the tokens are generated, will switch back to its original branding expression. Once again, you get the original color palette, you get the less pronounced border radii, and you get the much smaller gaps between the cards. I go to light mode, you'll see exactly the same thing. So in this case, we simply use these three properties as the example that we're working with. But in reality, you can use this technique with any kind of style property that you wish. You can change things like typography. You can change the way that it's laid out. Anything you can express in CSS is something that you can control through this technique. So you can have much more pronounced changes to UI being controlled by your tokens. And once again, all of this being achieved without having to maintain the actual application source code itself across a collection of applications in an organization. So one more time, at Lab 49, we're big fans of using this headless design system. This helps us ensure that we can build scalable systems that can be easily controlled over time. We use Figma as a means to not only express UI and UX, but also create a collection of variables that help us extract the values that define the branding out of the development and into the design, pushing this effort left and letting the products and design teams be responsible for maintaining it and taking away the burden of having to update multiple applications at once. We use this in order then to go into our application source code and generate a collection of tokens which can then be used across applications by using build tools that will generate these files for each applicable use case coming out of one single source of truth, which is a collection of design tokens that are generated or exported coming out of Figma. By using this use case, we have the ability of pushing our design efforts left, which basically means we can let the design and product teams be responsible for defining our branding. We don't have to worry about having to update every single application independently to keep it within brand guidelines and maintaining this drift manually. We can simply shift it left and let the applications worry about building features and not have to worry about keeping in sync with the design. Thank you very much for your attention.